welcome back to Friday Night Fights, here with 4th IB on Twitch TV. So, Barton, what have you got to tell for us based on that last round? It was crazy. I loved it, you loved it, and I hope the guys in the chat loved it. But, break it down for anyone who missed it at the time.
Last round was a very quick round. It had a lot of content and a large variety of content. There was some very aggressive plays from the defensive team, no less. But again, with them being aggressive, they were also very high risk, and they didn't play out. Green4 lost so many of their men early on in just solid attacks by Blue4, or just too aggressive movements by their perimeter forces, which later then kind of really hurt them for when it was the last grind through the last few buildings. It made it so that there was really no men to actually hold all the angles, and Blue4 capitalized on that and pushed them on all sides. They did very well. They read the situation, Blue4, and they provided very strong, committed attacks in certain directions, just able to just overwhelm Green4. So it was a very comfortable Blue4 side, or Blue4 win. But there was also great plays of individuals on both sides, but also a good play of Blue4 team-wise, which sadly wasn't the same for Green4, as their kind of plan kind of fell apart after they lost their perimeter elements.
Yeah, and I think it was. Well, I think you summed it up quite nicely in before we had that break, where just the teamwork didn't seem to be there for Green4. It was just a lot of separate elements acting by themselves, trying to get stuff done. Whereas the Blue4 guys were so much more cohesive. They had their plan and they stuck to their plan throughout, and were able to, push along to it. We have apparently been told that we need to hydrate. Someone's redeemed that, so I hope you have some hydration liquids near you. I do here.
It's a bit of a sin. It's a beer glass, but I filled it with water.
And I have a purple glass that I've filled with water. So here we are. Thank you.
I think the viewers are just as disappointed as me about that. Hey ho.
Yeah, and so thank you for redeeming those points there. We do appreciate it. But yeah, as we are coming into this next round, before we had the break, I asked about what your guys' highlights were from that previous round. And one of the points that came in was the guy whose name I think was Johnson, I'm trying to remember it, underneath the truck, holding down that sort of squared area. And yeah, it took out quite a few people as they all tried to come in. And yeah, I have to agree with that. I think that was a pretty impressive defense by this guy all by himself, essentially, towards the end. And he probably got more kills than quite a lot of the rest of Green4 in a very short space of time, even though he was very near the end and all by himself towards that end. So, yeah, fair play to him. I think that's a pretty good moment to highlight yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. That was a very good play by them. My personal favorite would have been so many. It was just chaos all over the place. But it was the usage of the scaffolding on the perimeter of that allowed them to dominate the courtyard, which Green4 thought they were securing, and they just lined up on the walls, but they didn't count for that. They didn't really assess their ground and the weaknesses of that, and it just allowed Blue4 to just completely walk over their last position. So not a lot of forethought there, and it just it was very good eyes on by Blue4, and a very good snap plan there in terms of utilizing that scaffolding and dominating the ground inside the point. So that's my favorite.
Yeah, I think that was really cool to use the environment like that. I hadn't seen it before, and it was quite impressive to see. And they were able to use it very successfully as well. So it obviously works very nicely. For me, I think my favorite point was probably right at the very start, where Green4 just went for it and just threw all their vehicles out and tried to essentially raid pirate style the Blue4 guys as they were coming in. Unfortunately for Green4, it didn't work at all. But the thought was there, and no one was expecting it. I mean, I wasn't expecting it, that's for sure. And it was fun to watch. Yeah, and as we are getting ready for this next round. Do you want to give a bit of information about what this upcoming round is going to be about?
So this game mode is neutral point or neutral sector, is what they call it. It is pretty much a domination type round where each point will give a tick rate of certain points in the first team to 100 points, or who eliminates the enemy team in its entirety uh, will win, right? So it's all about here when you commit certain attacks, because in this instance you've got a whole island to play on, so you've got different flanks to secure, but all the points are very close together. So there's two ways this can go. There can be skirmishes all across a front line, or there can be everyone committing at the center and everyone getting killed trying to push over some open ground. I personally believe the advantage would definitely go to Op 4 here, or Red 4, because if they manage to get to Bravo first, they've got a lot, literally the airfield the other team has to push over to get through. But if they wanted to attack Bravo Point, if the other team got to Bravo Point, they had a lot of cover, a lot of dead ground because of a hill to use and get onto that point. So position wise, I think Op 4 has the advantage.
Yeah, and I do agree with you there with how close they are without having to cross all that dead ground. But let's have a look at how the teams are set up potentially then to counter this. Green 4 may have some sort of air vehicles that they can use to get in there quicker, as opposed to Op 4 who don't look to at this moment in time. No, just a lot of land vehicles, but as expected, and it's a relatively small map again. Not all too large, so we'll see, just how both teams are able to using it. So looking at what's here, then, how do you think Green 4 should try and approach this, considering they're slightly on the back foot here with the positions of the, the points?
Well, it's going to be. I think it was intended for there to be an equal position both ways. So I'm unsure at the moment of what advantage Green 4 could have in terms of this position,
Hmm.
because the points are somewhat closer to Op 4 than they are Green 4. Uh, Green 4 has also got to climb a hill towards their objective. I think that may be the same for Op 4 as well, but it's more of a gradual hill. Actually, yes, just a tiny hill at the start, and then it's just flat ground straight to the points. So realistically, I think that is negated by the cover that has been provided in the center of the airfield. It's very limited, and you have good people with grenadier positions.
Hmm.
They can really cause hurt for anything pushing through. But as you can see, you got dominant ground on the south. You got the ATC tower they can get into, and they can literally just fire down. So, but for green force positions, they do have the hills further back. So is either the green force going to take a more cautious approach, knowing this that they got the hills to use, or they're not going to realize that and try to put all their forces into trying to get B first. You know, the typical rush B doesn't
Yeah,
work. And I think if they do that, it will definitely backfire on green force. What they need to do is they need to be cautious. They take their point first, and then they also need to set up dominating positions on the hills, utilizing their BTRs. Because I think the vehicle's the same for both sides. What do you think from an Op4 perspective? What do you think they should do, Morgan?
well, from an Op 4 perspective, they, at least looking at it like fairly basically, they have this one with a huge advantage in a geographical sense because they have the points on their side of the runway. They don't necessarily need to expose themselves, so those hills shouldn't be too much of a big deal for when they push up, because they should potentially already be in those positions before the independents get set up on those hills with their BTRs or grenadiers or snipers or whatever it is they're going to be using there. So I don't really know what else specifically Op4 can do. I think at this point, even though it's the start, it is their game to lose, and the Green 4 need to do something quite special to get across the airfield and then take those points back. Obviously, it's going to be both teams have their respective hard points that they will hold. the ones that are close to their bases, and then there's going to be that one middle one which is just on the edge of the airfield that they're going to sort of battle over. But
Mm-hmm.
Op4 should have that one fairly straightforward. I think they can sacrifice quite a lot of their manpower from their sort of home base and then use quite a lot to defend around the more contested area. How exactly they want to do that is going to be probably using what little cover there is around that area. There are some buildings, and potentially they can, maybe build up some stuff themselves, or not. But they've got the vehicles that they can use, and they can move things quite around. And potentially, as Green 4 are going to be the ones who have to make the play, they could use that to their advantage and then try and outflank the flank that may be coming in from Green 4. Green 4 are going to be forced to get across the runway somehow, whether that be directly across or round the runway. Then that's we'll have to wait and see. But I don't know. I think it's going to be very difficult for Green 4 no matter what they do. I think Op 4's just got such a strong position, just with how it's been dealt to them essentially. So
Yeah,
yeah, I can't see
absolutely.
too much more other than just set up and wait for Green 4 to overcommit to a certain area and then just reshuffle your defenses there and should be fine.
Should be. It does look like. Well, for Green 4, they've got to climb a steeper hill here and then get into position. They can't. If they follow the road, they will never get into their position before Op4 will, because Op4 do have a hill to climb, but their box is actually past that hill, so they don't have to come from the beach. They literally start from here, and it's just a straight push
Yeah.
directly there, and you can see it straight away. So what Green 4 should be doing, I think, is they should be pushing from the west. They shouldn't come in from the north. If they get up this hill, it's literally a short hill this way. It's not as significant as this one. And then they got downhill all the way into the base, and they can use the coastline to keep one of their flanks secure while pushing and outflanking the Op4. But what Op4 should be doing is getting the points early on,
Mhm.
and just holding that tick rate. And if they can take all 3 points and hold that tick rate, that's going to be an easy win for them.
Yeah, I think so. And with how Green 4 are set up as well, it's going to be tough, like regardless of what they try and do. They have it difficult, and like you said, pushing down on the far west with the coastline to guard one of their flanks. But if they do that, they don't really have much space to maneuver, as they kind of have to go slightly downhill. So if they get caught out going across there, then that's it. They have to push back up the hill to flee, which is never a position you want to be in, because they can't move further round to try and get a wider arc for their flank because the water is there. Unless they were given boats. I haven't seen any boats on either side, but potentially there were some. But with Op4, if they push along to their right-hand side to maybe come around the airfield and then cut across that hillside, then that could be quite devastating there too. It's going to be interesting to see the approaches and how independents currently are setting up. They all look to wanting to be sort of rushing a similar direction. No one wants to push sort of further east along that side of the airfield, which I guess leaves it open as sort of free real estate to opt for. They can push along that direction relatively unscathed, and the geography of that area means that they will essentially have the higher ground when they come around that flank as well if they do, and yeah, make life difficult for independents. And looking how they're kind of getting themselves set up now, maybe that is the plan that they'll try and go for. We haven't seen them load up into their vehicles fully to sort of push out, but yeah, it depends. It looks like they've just got that one element that they're going to maybe send off flanking, where the rest of the guys are going to be all heading down, getting into the fight, and holding the fire line straight away.
Yeah, I think Green 4 are ready to go. They're just going to be waiting for another 6 minutes till the timer starts. Usually on these sector caps, they usually figure out their plan quite early on and then just go straight in. With the Opful, they're still yet to create their plan, and they're sort of setting up still. I'm not entirely sure what their plan is, but I think just rushing down the points and getting the points ticking in their favor would be the best idea for them.
Yeah, I think so. And there's gonna be a lot of fighting going on. We hope we can kind of expect that there shall be because yeah, Otfort have the advantage, and independents need to make something happen, or it's just gonna fall away from them ever so slightly, which isn't what they want to happen. Some of these sort of what are they called? The neutral sector game modes. They do sort of take a long time, as no one wants to sort of be that one to step out, and they kind of want to sit back and defend. But hopefully, with this map set out the way it is, that won't happen. And I think that's quite a good showing for the map designer here, that they've thought about this. They've thought about how long these maps can be, and they've thought, well, how can we force the action to take place? And I think they've done a very good job of building the map the way it is. So yeah, shout outs to whoever built this map.
Enough, yeah. Does look like it's going to be a very. I can't put it any way because they're both even teams at the moment,
Yeah,
right? And it's all about the strategy they choose. It does look like Otful will be trying to flank as well. So if they do commit forces to take the points, then they want to have those flanking elements delaying that counter-attack on Greenfall. It does look like Greenfall are making a concerted push, and they're not using the road, which means they are adopting the plan of going up this small rise, going through this compound, and pushing downhill all the way into the point. Because if they rush that, they probably would have an equal time to the point as Op4. So they're probably safe if they commit. But if they're hesitant in any form of way or lose seconds, it will definitely hurt them badly. So it's all a race at the start, believe
yeah.
it or not. It's all a race. Who gets where first?
And let's think of it from this perspective. Let's say the independents get there and they lock down the two points that they want to secure, essentially.
Hmm.
Well, how does that leave Op4? If Op4 are late to this, they shouldn't be, but if something happens, I don't know, one of these trucks armorisms backflips and then explodes, and then they're kind of all held up for that, giving independents plenty of time to get into their point, and then the one just across the airfield. Well, how does that leave Op4 in this situation?
In a very bad position indeed, Morgan. They don't really have a lot of good positions to attack the points from.
Yeah,
Greenfall does. They've got a hill to increase the speed of their vehicles so they can slam in and get into the buildings quickly. They've also got dominating grounds of those hills, which allows them to get elevation on the enemy. So, from that just alone, you look from Op4's perspective. If they get to the points and Greenfall is there as well, it'll
mm,
be an initial fight who gets supremacy in that set area. But then if they're slow, if they lose the race, if Opera lose the race, they're in big trouble indeed. Because if they don't get into those urban area, that's pretty much game set and match. Because they would have to do large flanks, have isolated units, and if Greenfall reacts to that and knows that they have to do that, then they can take them out quite well. But if you just think about, look, there's a perimeter fence that can really hurt any attack.
yeah,
So they need top four need to win this race. If they win this race, they're in a chance. But if they lose this race, it'll be more problematic for them. Compare that to Greenfall. If Greenfall loses the race, they've got things to do. They've got clear arcs and they can do quite a bit. But if Op4 loses the race, they're quite limited in what they can do to try to counterattack because there's so much open ground and they're fighting against dominating positions.
yeah. I have to agree. I can't really see. Well, first of all, I can't really see how Op4 lose the race, but if they do, yeah, it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to get it back. Um, I think you've just summed up all the points. They don't really have any ways of being able to get in there and win that, other than potentially just going all the way around, maybe sending all of their units all the way around and trying to come in from independent side and just hope for the best at that point, because it's going to be difficult to make the plays coming from this southern side. Hopefully for them, they won't have to. And let's have a look at the fourth IB guys. Where are they set up in this one?
they were the first elements to the front, ready to go in and go down this hill. So they've been set to go for around about 6 minutes now. So they're really looking forward to getting into this. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with it. I'll find out who their squad leader is for this point, but it looks like all of Greenfall are going to try to push. It looks like the units on the road are going to use the hills. They're going to take the hills, which Greenfall also need to do. But again, their Greenfall just going to charge down this west side, bring the BTRs in as fast support, and get the infantry into those urban areas and just fight for dominance against Op4's push as well. And it's going to be at the start decides it all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you see here, Op4, you're in a column. Why? Why? See, this is not good. You're going to be staggering and you're always going to be delayed. Greenfall, on the other hand, are fanned out all on the start line at the same time. You don't. This isn't F1, right? Don't have your position set before the thing. You got no limit. So the round starts and they start pushing out. Looks like some people are a little bit slow, so they're losing the race already. Looks like there's a bit of desync going on server. Looks like Greenfall's just lost a vehicle due to desync. Another vehicle lost to Greenfall on desync. It's going up into the sky. They should be running away from these vehicles at the moment. It looks like it's been possessed. There's ghost vehicles driving around. Has Op4 being hurt as well by that? So you see, Greenfall has lost 2 of their transport vehicles, which means they're going to be losing this race. They got people on the ground. They need to get on those dominant positions. X-ray of Op4 is going to the south and started to the flank. They probably realise that those dominant positions will be a real pain to try to fight against. So they're going to try to negate that. Looks like X-ray drove straight past one of the vehicles in Greenfall and it has gone unnoticed. But we'll be reporting to the rest of Op4 where they are. See Op4 again making that huge push. Here's the fight. Here is this fight. This is the fight that decides where the round goes at the moment. And it's just shots going, shots going, shots going. Loads of shots. Get the explosions going. Move. That's the dominance. But now that because of the rust of the elements have just not been with them, they've been completely isolated. They haven't slammed into any building that's enterable and can fight from. They've gone to this building that isn't even rendered, which is not very good. It is very hard for Greenfall here, and it looks like Op4 has won that dominance early on and will be taking set to B from Greenfall here. It's a very sad thing that so many of our guys are dying so early on, but wasn't a very good position that they took up. They were very limited in what they could do, and their team just let them down. Look, the team's all over here, and they needed to fight for this position here to win, and that is going to be very hard for them. They are fighting hard, but they are all wounded. Boykin now T2. That's meaning stumbling, walking, can't aim straight. Looks like Op4 are literally getting onto their building. King pushing through. Literally one man of 4IB still left up. And it looks like Foyke is holding this down for his life, but then goes down from a unit flanking from his rear. And that is the entirety of 4IB wiped, I believe, from this round.
Yeah, it looks like from that assaulting party that's unfortunately they had the right idea there. They knew what they essentially had to do. They knew their win condition, but because of the desync, I expect probably had something to play in there. Maybe they were expecting more elements to be in that area with them, or maybe they had some other ideas of where they'd be able to set up, such as in the building that we can see the King is in right now. Maybe they thought we can get people set up here and we'll be okay, we'll have our backs covered, but unfortunately something has happened anyway, and the Greenfall guys weren't able to all pile into the area quite successfully, which is, yeah, that's it now. They've been locked out of that area, at least for now. We just have to wait and see, I guess, what it is that they try and do to take it back. But there's been a lot of action so far, and it's still going on.
Greenfall adopting not positions into the point, but not very strong positions due to the elevated areas here showing that this man is taking the elevated ATC channel tower, and all he has to do is wait because Green 4 owns 1 point, Op 4 owns 2 here. All of Op 4 has to do right now is sit tight, let them push open the open field. Stop with the stupid skirmishing, they have got the upper hand. Focus on the flanking elements, they are the most important here. Here, X-Ray looking to flank, as you said, Morgan, looking to flank and counter that dominant ground. They're coming from Green 4 side. The X-Ray Op 4 is coming into flank and possibly dislodge a hard position from Green 4.
It looks like, and as they've sort of positioned themselves with the nature of the spawns of the map, they will have their backs to the west side, which is the coast. So they're going to be compressed essentially with so many of the forces flanking. And they could potentially just send more of their forces to flank at this point. They don't need to have so many forces holding. You can hold those areas with a relatively small number of troops once you've got set up. But it does look like Green 4 are trying to go with a flank of their own for the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely right. Green 4 is advancing with Urals, but Op 4 know that they've got no Urals active at this time. So it's going to be very interesting if Op 4 will notice this. It looks like Dingo is pushed up very aggressively and has been intercepted by one of the sections of Op 4. He's hiding under the truck, but he's got nothing to play with. He's got to throw grenades and hope that someone dies from them. And that's exactly what he's doing. They seem to believe that he's further behind than he actually is. That's a squad leader going down. Pierce goes down from Op 4. Dingo still hiding underneath the truck, doing some serious damage.
Yeah, he is. Fair play.
Very work. It's like this round repeating itself, and there he goes down. He's managed to kill 2 people, possibly even 3 people, and that section's really limited in what they can do. Green 4's push is they've just been caught out in the open again. What we were talking about earlier, that Op 4 has no real chance to push from their side, and now they decided to push from Op 4 side, which is a weaker position. And they've just pushed onto urban positions, and they're caught with a fence in front of them and massively open territory. So, bad read of the ground there, and that's just lost Green 4 a lot of men in that push alone.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It's unfortunate with how Green 4, how the start went down for them. I think on that push there, if they could have tried to potentially take the Op 4's base position, let's call it, from them, and try to maybe assault down that way and get something done there. But there is this BTR here for Green 4. It's riskily pushing up very close. Anybody could be around a corner with an AT stick, and that's it. His BTR is gone. But at this point, I guess Green 4 have to get something done. They have to do something to make the plays happen. And I guess this is all they can come up with at this point.
It looks like that BTR has been disabled. Whether or not it'll cook off will definitely go into, surprisingly, Green 4's advantage. The gunner dismounted after realizing his driver has been killed by an AT stick, or a RPG in this case. But it looks like you see this flank, loads of different elements to the south of Green 4 just completely wiped out. As we said, if Op 4 were caught in this position, they'd be wiped out as well. And look, as we've seen, Green 4 tried to do that, and they didn't use their dominant ground. Looks like Op 4 have taken their northern hard position and now catching men literally just beneath them here. Just catching them out, and they're losing men really rapidly. Looks like one of the BTRs has been hit hard by another BTR on the western flank, but it's unsure the impact, but it definitely looks to go in Op 4's advantage right now.
Yeah, it looks like Op 4 just seem to have had a better read on the map, as well as their advantage with their start and the unfortunate circumstances with independence and their desyncs at the beginning. But yeah, it's just kind of gone a bit unfortunate for the independents from this point on. The independents, they were kind of caught out, and then I guess they all tried to make those Hail Mary plays and just go for it, but in doing so, they've, like you've said, given up their super strong high ground that they have, and Op 4 have flanked around it, taken it up. And at this point, it might be a a bit early, let's say, to call it, but I'd be hard pressed to see Independence actually get away with this. And look at this BTI, he's come around the corner and they're all lined up there for him. So yeah, it's gonna be tough. Let's say it'll be very tough for Independence to pull this one out, but we have seen things happen that we haven't expected before. So maybe such a thing can happen. This would be very difficult with the very few numbers and positions that the Green 4 guys have. But, you know, it could happen. That's the thing we have to watch out for here.
As you're seeing, that Op 4's flank is now pushing down onto the elements right next to their base, or at this hangar, and all they have to do is throw a grenade down the hill and it injures them all. This flanking element from X-Ray has completely done it. There was no real security for Green 4. Has ended up in a really bad situation because shots that were actually killing them, they believed it was their own men firing those shots because they believed they had forces to their rear. So the Op 4 was able to take out those forces on this hill so quickly that they didn't radio the fact that. And any shots there where they thought, that's a thing. This is what happens when you don't have a reserve. They had a whole element come from the south and attack from Op 4's perspective, as we talked about. Very weak attacking position. They got wiped out. There was no reserve force at all. And it just led into a very, very hard situation for Green 4 to even win from. The BTRs look to be fighting on the western side, but both seem to be damaged at this stage. So all of this is made up by the infantry on the points themselves. And again, as we're saying, Op 4 doesn't need to do anything. They just need to sit tight, worry about the flanking positions, and just wait. It looks like Op 4 is completely wiped out. The Op 4 X-ray division is completely wiped out the enemy infantry here. So that's not too good. They're a bit stingy with their bullets, so one man managed to wake up from being injured, but Green 4 looks to be in a very, very weak position right now. Extremely weak.
Yeah, there's very few elements left. There's the elements on the base itself, and then there's elements just off to the northeast, or the east-northeast, I guess, of that base hard point. And yeah, it's we've said it many times at this point, but it's very difficult for Independence to get much done from this point. It's the only thing I guess they can really hope for is Op 4 guys to get impatient of just sitting and waiting, which is something that we've seen happen quite a few times. And then overextending and getting caught either out in the open or trying to breach a building unsuccessfully, or potentially I don't know, maybe one of the BTRs can do some work and level one of the buildings with the majority of Op 4's forces inside. There's a number of things that can happen, but whether they will happen, they're very unlikely to happen, and not because of the players involved, just because of the way things are. It's unlikely that a BTR is going to get the opportunity to level a building with about 40 Op 4 guys in there. But the early positioning has definitely had a big impact on this one.
Absolutely. As we said, that first engagement decides the round, and it looks to be the case. Although the one thing that is going in Green 4's advantage is that they've immobilized both enemy BTRs. That's the only thing they've got going for them. But those BTRs are still very much active. They are just immobile, so they're static positions now, caught in dead ground. So they can't affect what happens on the point. But I don't think the BTR really knows this. Is now completely distracted by stuff on the point, but it's not really ending with anything real good. And it looks like one of the BTRs that was used by Green 4 initially has now been commandeered by Op 4, and is now making it even harder for Green 4 to push from their position. But as it stands now, Op 4 has 44 points to Green 4's 22.
Yeah, and it is a first to 100, so obviously if we go from Op 4 score, they're about halfway through at this point, and given how long it's been, it hasn't been long at all. We do just have to wonder whether or not boredom will set in for these people, and if it does, then maybe they'll try and go for something crazy and try to make a fancy heroic play, or maybe they're just content to sit back and just let the victory come to them. I don't think it's too consequential for them, as these two ships pass in the night, or almost maybe they spotted each other. I think the Op 4 spotted the BTR anyway, dismounted. What's going on there?
There's a man with an RPG running through the woods. He's starting to prep his RPG to hit this BTR. Looks like the Greenfield BTR is going to take a direct hit from a RPG gun. As you say, with a flank. It looks like a satchel also went off, coupled with an RPG shot, and that is goodbye BTR. So the advantage Greenfield did have is now gone.
Yeah, things just going slightly from bad to worse for the independents in this situation. And the element on the hill is still up there, and they are still in that in their houses trying to lock that area down as best they can. And it does look like Op 4 potentially going for an assault onto that building, so maybe we'll get some last action, and the Op 4 guys won't just let it drag out and get the guaranteed victory. They want to try and get the domination victory and make a statement here.
Op 4's already got this in the bag, as you said, Morgan. Really nothing they have to do to win now. They've got every advantage. They got numbers, they got position, they got a vehicle technically, because even though they're immobilized, they're still static positions and they haven't been destroyed. But Op 4 is making questionable plays here by trying to push. They don't need to. Literally, just read the situation. They don't even need to risk the men. The only flanking force from Greenfield left has been found out and it's been pinned down by Op 4 in very good position. So this game is already set and match, Morgan. There's not really much to say. We're just looking for individual plays here and a bit of content here and there,
I think you're right. I think it is safe to call this one at this point, unless there is the mother of all content comes out from the Greenfield here and they do something crazy and are able to turn it over. But yeah, it's just going to be a matter of waiting now. And yeah, Op 4, they are slowly pushing in towards the area, and maybe they're able to get something down. But instead of just waiting around and watching this happen, then what do you think independents potentially could have done different to secure this victory here?
They needed to read their situation. I really question the decision to have a large flank and a dedication of force to flank them from their side, which they didn't run. They didn't go into an urban area. They decided to go to probably one of the worst positions they could have gone to, and then they just got lit up, which is exactly what happened. They went to a thing where they got a fence in front of them, they dismounted their infantry, and it just ended in disaster. Greenfield. We were talking about the first firefight would be the deciding firefight, and that's exactly what was the case. 4B arrived on scene and were able to, put a lot of fire down, wound some people, but because they didn't have the numbers and their position wasn't the greatest, because you got 3 Op 4 position compared to 1 building that they can't even enter. It was pretty much game, set, and match at that stage. It was just 4B by itself trying to win the round, but there was nothing really they could do. They tried their best, but there was nothing they can do because the Op 4 had a massive numbers advantage in that position, and they were just able to put that suppression fire, put that base of fire down, and then win that engagement outright. And now Op 4 are looking to cement their victory, pushing in on the final point, and it's just painful. Realistically, it's just there's nothing really Greenfield can do in this instance. There's nothing they can do.
Yeah, I think you put that really well with yeah, just everything there. I think I don't really have much else to add. I think Greenfield unfortunately didn't get all their men down to the area where I think they wanted them to very early on, and yeah, it's just caused them from there. And like you say as well, the crazy loop around flank to push from Op 4's position, which we know is the weaker strategical position based on, well, one, how the map looks, and two, just by investigating it and seeing how their potential attack vectors could be from the southern side. And yeah, I think Greenfield lost a significant amount of their forces from that southern approach as well, which yeah didn't work down. And I mean, obviously hindsight is 2020, and it didn't work, but yeah, just by knowing the positions, and I guess they kind of have to go for something and make that kind of play. But Yeah, as has been said before, I think the initial firefight was the deciding firefight, and with the way it was structured, they weren't able to get their men down to the ground as fast as they would have liked. In which case, yeah, it just kind of lost it all for them. And I wonder if the desync had a big part to play in that, or if there were other factors at work. Maybe the plan wasn't to send as many troops down to that way, or something. Maybe they were planning on sending many more down on the ground, and unfortunately, it just didn't go to plan. I've been informed though that apparently the ties can now be removed from our heads, so I'm going to do that quickly, and then we can resume with the hard-hitting content of this assault here.
Sounds good.
Oh, there we go. My head feels so much lighter now.
I'm pinning it down at the moment. Ugh. I feel like Da Vinci is just hiding in his corner at the moment. There's nothing really much he can do. I think Watford is having more blue on blue than anything else now. They hold all three of the points, and at this stage, Greenfall has to take all 3 points to win. All 3. Not even if they take 2, they would win. There's nothing they can realistically do. I think there's an element out to the east caught in open ground again. Nothing they can do. Otfor's been very wise in holding their positions at all stages and just making that defense in depth from just attacking and taking those positions. But the Vincer looks to be getting just holding this door and goes down sadly and didn't take any man with him. So that's it. They've Otfor's got dominant every single point without a green fort even on a point at the moment.
Yeah. If it was looking bad for Greenfall before, then I mean it's looking even worse now, and we just have this lone element here trying to trying to crawl across the ground and make it work as his buddy up on top of the hill does seem to go down.
We've got 1 tick left. 1 more tick and it's 1 for
There
Otfor.
we are. So they did their best. They fought as hard as they could, but unfortunately, it didn't go their way. And like we've said many times, it was the start, unfortunately, that pushed it in this direction. They weren't able to get the guys into position just how they wanted in time due to a number of circumstances. But yeah, that was the deciding factor. And at that point, Independents were behind for the rest of it. I think if they were able to get troops down to that position in time, I think they could have had a good chance and at least had an even fight and were able to get maybe an exchange on, and it would be a completely different game at that point. But unfortunately, that's not how it was meant to be. And yeah, here is how it has ended at this point. So, with how we are then, Barton, do you want to try and sum up tonight's events for the ladies and gentlemen at home?
Right, I'll do it very quickly as I can. We had a very good round at the start. It was quite progressive in the way it went, and it ended up in a optimal victory due to overcommitments in terms of the defensive. They refused to let their positions go, and they refused to make a hard points in depth. So there was no coordinated defense that could help each other. So there was lots of pockets, which would work well if the enemy did lots of pockets. But that's not what the enemy did. They did the pockets once, they lost their element, and then they just started doing committed attacks, and then they won through that way. Second round, a very quick victory as far as I'm aware. There was a very aggressive push by the defenders, and they didn't know when to stop being aggressive, and they lost their outer vehicles, they lost their outer elements, and again, one of their defenses got completely cut off from the rest due to the open ground behind it. And so no real defense. There was a little bit of defense in depth, but the defense in depth was literally 1 or 2 people in the building behind. So they lost their caches, and they also didn't assess their ground very well because on their strongest position, they forgot that there was scaffolding on the outside, allowing them to get the enemy team to get in onto their position and dominate and kill everyone that was actually garrisoning that point. So that ended the second round of another comfortable attacking win. And then on this one, it was neutral sector. And what we saw was green for losing the race at first and opt for winning the race. But then Greenfall made some questionable strategic or tactical decisions, leading to them being caught out of position in a weaker position than they would have been otherwise. And that desync at the start very hurt them, made them lose the wet race. So it's very sad to see that, but that game was pretty much over by the time that first firefight finished, because after that it just all kind of fell apart for Greenfall.
Yeah, I think you've summed that up really well. And unfortunately, we don't like to see games decided on external factors such as desync, but you can't help that sometimes. And unfortunately, that just seems to maybe have had the deciding effect on that final game. But ignoring that one, though, the previous two games were really entertaining, I think, and I had a very good time watching them, and I hope everybody at home did as well. And so that's pretty much it from everything here. But before we go, I want to say, of course, a huge thank you to the Friday Night Fights team for getting these set up and for allowing us to run our stream here, and for being very good. Well, just being very good sports, I guess, and getting us all set up and being able to answer any questions that we have, and just be very good point of contact to have. So thank you very much to the Friday Night Fights team. Thank you, Barton, for being here. It's been a pleasure commentating with you as always. I really like what you bring to the commentating table. I love hearing your points on things. It's very interesting. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone in the chat for coming out here, and for all the subscribers, whether it was a Prime subscription, or another subscription. Thank you for those of you who are gifting subscriptions. I saw loads of them as well. So huge thank you for you guys. Thank you for all the bits donated as well. It makes a big deal to us. And but please don't feel that anybody needs to donate at all. That's not what we're here for. We're simply here just to provide you with amazing top tier content, uh, which is content that we've captured. Let's say we aren't the ones bringing the content, we're just enhancing the content. The content is made by the guys on the ground. So thank you everybody to participating in Friday Night Fights and making this even something interesting for us to show. Thank you to the 4IP guys for participating in there and showing your wonderful perspectives and adding those extra dynamic camera angles. Massive shout outs there. And finally, a thank you to EQ, the man behind the scenes who gets all this done. Without him, this would very simply not be possible, especially to the level of professionalism that it is here. So, Barton, anything you'd like to say before we close off?
No, you said all the thank yous perfectly well. Everyone, great job tonight. Good sportsmanship, and we saw very good content. Hopefully, we'll have the same next week.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. So, one last big thank you from all of us here, and we hope to see you all next week for another show. Yeah, so thank you and bye bye.
Take care.